welcome back to Jones & Company. I'm your host, Brian Jones, and that first segment was brought to you by Agio Digital. Today we're here with Dr. Tim Barrett discussing a broad range of issues. Thank you for joining me today.
It's my pleasure. I'm enjoying it.
Fantastic. And so before the last break, we were talking about this separation between reality and some of the constructs we build in our mind, right? And you've been able to see with a level of clairvoyance, it appears that what is real from what isn't, and help people make certain realizations, right? Can you talk to us about this departure from reality and how that often affects the human condition?
Just a discussion of reality needs us to establish some fundamentals in terms of our understanding. Mm-hmm. There are things that we agree on, and there are things that we agree to give labels to. Mm-hmm. And we call that reality, okay? But each person's reality is their own. We occupy right now, you and me, a geographical world space that is contiguous to one another, okay? Mm-hmm. We're sitting here within 4 feet of each other. Mm-hmm. I can't taste peas and rice in your mouth, though. And my universe and your universe, we are allowed to intersect. But there is no way for you to see something the way I see it, mm-hmm. for you to understand it the way I understand it. Mm-hmm. Most we can get is a good approximation.
They say perception is deception sometimes.
Well, the biggest problem you can have is to have something wrong with your perceptions. Mm-hmm. And we hear about people going and being admitted to psychiatric hospital, and mainly because they have perceptual abnormalities. Mm-hmm. Those are the most severe psychiatric or mental illnesses, where they hear things that don't have a physical stimulus, or they see things that don't have a physical stimulus, or they have a fixed, false belief about something that is unshakable. Mm-hmm. That's their reality. Mm-hmm. So when I have to deal with that kind of presentation or patient, I don't argue with them about what is right and wrong. Mm-hmm. I said, okay, I know you hear it. I'm not challenging you on that. Mm-hmm. I know you hear it, but the rest of us don't. Mm-hmm. So don't get vexed with us if we say we don't hear it, okay? Mm-hmm. Because that's the main point of contention when everybody says, something must be wrong with you, you hearing things. Mm-hmm. No, they actually, what an hallucination is a perception without a stimulus, mm-hmm. okay?
Right.
And some people believe things to a delusional level, and even though they're not perceptually impaired. Mm-hmm. And you may have this in groups, in individuals. Yeah, they just choose to believe.
Right. And so I guess a lot of these perception issues are a lot more common than we would like to think, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. And I mean, you can just listen to conversations where people are absolutely sure about something. Mm-hmm.
And they're living in their own world, so to speak.
Well, they're excluding us from the world that they're living in, okay? Right. Or demanding that we see the world through their eyes. Right. And the minute you're free, when you now say, okay, I acknowledge that's what you see and what you hear, mm-hmm. but I see and I hear something different. Right. Now that gives room for conversation.
Right. Yeah. See, this topic, and talk about room for conversation, yeah. I mean, it hasn't been central to conversation on the topic of mental health because it has been taboo. I mean, it is somewhat taboo to a large extent, across the board, for any number of reasons. I mean, how do you basically make someone comfortable to address, let's say, a mental issue that they might have? They might not recognize they have it. You know, how do you bridge that divide?
Key is acceptance.
Acceptance.
Acceptance. I accept you right where you are, yeah? And building a friendship, relationship to the point where you can trust me to not work against you. Now, once you know you have an ally, even though you might initially not want me to go down that street, you'll allow me to have a conversation with you about the possibility, simply because you say, okay, fine, he's not my enemy, he's my friend. But it's a situation that takes a lot of experience and a lot of skill, because we have to move away in medicine from compliance, which is I say you do, to adherence to the treatment regime, which is I give you an understanding, I explain the pros and cons, and we collaborate.
Right.
I keep telling people the doctors will give you a treatment plan. You're responsible for managing your own health. Okay.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So when it comes to talking about mental, let's say, disorders and so on, I mean, that's one, I guess, that's an extreme, essentially. Like you can have mental issues or concerns or need to talk to a psychiatrist, psychologist, without really having, let's say, a disorder or a mental illness per se, right?
There are lots of mental illnesses that cause dysfunction personally, relationally, in the workplace, that are not in hospital. So let's look at the percentage of people that are severely mentally ill. 5%, max.
5%. Okay.
Right. Which means 95% are mild to moderate. They'd work.
At best.
They'd work.
They work.
They're functioning, all right, with different degrees of disability depending on whether they have addressed the issue, like somebody who's extremely obsessional and fastidious and perfectionistic and takes 3 hours to do what you can get done in 15 minutes. That's such a waste of time.
It is.
Okay, and it's called obsessional slowness. There's a name for it.
Right.
There are people who have chronic anxiety. They never ever feel comfortable. You know, we call that generalized anxiety disorder. And you have to treat that because they develop all kinds of somatic symptoms, physical aches and pains, fast heartbeat. They end up in emergency room because they're feeling they have a heart attack. They have palpitations. They go to the gastroenterologist because they're having abdominal pain and whatever else. They go to the neurologist because they're having numbness and tingling in the fingers and the toes. They can end up to a wide range of... I saw a gentleman brought to me by his sister once, and she said, I mean, I don't know how much money he'd spent, over $40,000. Frequency of urine. Pure anxiety. But every test you get that comes out normal convinces you that these doctors can't find out what's wrong with me, and what's wrong with me must be really bad. You see?
Right. And so it exacerbates the problem.
It exacerbates. So I think we got him 12 weeks. And he was right as rain.
Fantastic.
Right? Yeah. And this was at a time when he was engaged to be married, and things kept being put off because, you know, he's losing confidence in himself, and, you know, his fiancée wanted to know, well, is this how he's going to be in 2 years and 3 years? Good question.
I'm just glad on a national level that we're starting to embrace open conversations about mental health more. We've seen this coming out of Dorian when people really were affected psychologically to a large extent.
It's still getting short shrift though.
Short, right?
Yeah, it's still getting short shrift. Even in the realm of my professional ranks, stigmatizing attitudes towards mental illness, they not only exist, they interfere with people coming forward and getting help, or being or participating. And I'm wondering out loud if the digital move cannot incorporate an attitude towards making sure that they prioritize mental health and become the leaders, not only in the crypto world and the digital world, but become the foremost proponents of mental health. I'm just wondering out loud, because that kind of thing is going to resonate with the younger generation.
Yes.
And that's really who we want to target.
Yes.
And if digital so-and-so and digital so-and-so and crypto so-and-so says we identify mental health as our either number 1 or 2 priority, wow.
Right.
How powerful can that be?
Well, see, I think that makes total sense because the digital asset space is very topsy-turvy, as you know. It's highly volatile.
That's right.
Right. Just last week, one of the big stable coins blew up. Is UST, US Terra blew up, and almost, I think, a dozen suicides were reported.
Wow.
Right? This is happening, it's still unfolding now. Turns out, it wasn't just an operational thing. There was some fraud. A lot of people are now affected. Some people, a very famous investor actually got a huge tattoo for this crypto brand on his arm.
Yeah.
Right? And now he says it serves as a reminder of what not to do and that you have to be humble. Yeah. But the fact of the matter is some people didn't take it so well, right? Some people went to extremes. And I agree that every sector needs to be concerned about mental health. Definitely in the crypto space, it's important. Now, how do we address dropping these taboos, right? These stigmas. So, for example, in the digital realm, I'm seeing now telehealth, right? Over the phone, Zoom, etc. We saw that proliferate, doctor visits, consultations, etc.
That's still in the closet, though.
It is, right?
I need something more public than that.
A public forum.
COVID, the fallout from COVID, number 1 is not going to be long COVID or the cognitive effects of COVID by itself, but the cognitive effects of COVID along with the psychological effects of COVID. And that's going to be exacerbated by the cognitive effects, and that's unfolding now as we speak. All right. In March 2020, I wrote a letter, and I'll just leave it like that. And I said, we're doing well with the group that's organized to look after our pandemic challenges. But I don't see a human behavior expert or mental health expert as part of the team. And I predicted the problems with isolation, with quarantine, with people who had a previous history of any kind of psychiatric disorder being more exposed more easily now. People who had never had a psychiatric disorder before, now getting to the point where they start to experience psychiatric symptoms. So the demand on psychiatry and psychological services were going to increase. So sad, so done.
It was inevitable, right?
Yeah, inevitable.
And so mental health obviously is a part of wellness, overall well-being. You know, you have the physical
I
and
like
the
that
mental
word,
component,
wellness.
right? And so when it comes to wellness, they say prevention is better than cure,
Right.
right? When it comes to physical fitness, right, the way I mean, you have to exercise, you have to train to maintain that a high level of fitness.
Right.
So when it comes to maintaining mental health, is there anything you can do proactively, right, as opposed to being reactive, trying to respond to stress and challenges? How do we stay mentally fit?
Let me move into the Bible here for a minute.
Well, I think that'd only be right as an ordained minister. I left that out of your introduction as a fact. You had a grandfather and your father were reverend, right?
Yes.
Ordained minister.
Yes.
So
3 John verse 2 says, Beloved, I wish above all things, boom, highest level of priority, that thou mayest prosper and be in health, even as thy soul, which is the Greek, New Testament is written in Greek, that word psyche, soul, so that's psychological health, even as that prospers. So what don't we understand about that? It clearly gives the prioritization of health and what is important for your overall health. First of all, you have to be mentally healthy. You could be as fit as you want, but if this isn't working well, you can't function.
that's right.
You can't function. It's just, you have the story of Lennox Lewis, who got knocked out by Oliver McCall, okay? One right hand, big, strong guy. In the return bout, Oliver McCall was not recognized as having a mental issue. They thought his solitude and his withdrawal was part of pre-fight preparation. He hardly threw a punch in anger in that second fight. And around the 5th or 6th round, I think, he put his hands on the ropes, turned to the side, and started bawling like a baby. McCall Lewis 2, look it up.
Wow.
That's right.
I will.
Fit as you want to be, big bear of a man, just knock out the same guy. And even with all of that, Lewis could not even do damage to him. That's how strong he was.
Wow, that's incredible.
Incredible.
Yes.
I often quote that, give that reference.
Right. So the physical fitness has nothing to do with your mental fitness, right? And so when
it does help
it helps. Yes.
when it's done in sync. When the process for everybody, I say, look, you want to be more healthy mentally, exercise on a regular basis.
Right.
We're not going to Olympics.
Like if someone is physically out of shape, is it possible for them to be 100% sound mentally?
Well, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say no. Because you don't know what boost you're going to get from being fit physically.
Right.
Right.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there was a time I wasn't working out, and I remember as soon as I made the switch, there was a complete mental switch as well, right?
You can tell.
Boost
you
of
can feel
energy,
the difference.
the whole thing. Yeah. So there's definitely a correlation. No, there's no question about
Yes.
it. And so, by and large, right, looking at our society as we come down to the end of this segment, right? We have a lot of issues we have to deal with across the board. And it's difficult to pinpoint any answers specifically, right? There's no silver bullet to solving all of our issues, right? But I think one of the main things we can do towards solving some of our societal ills is having conversations like this, right? And so, I mean, as we kind of wrap up the conversation, is there any final words you'd like to offer to the general public with respect to how we manage our mental health?
I think it is going to be most important for us to recognize the opportunity that COVID presents us now to reflect on the physical, the economic, and the psychological, psychiatric fallout. And yes, focus on getting fit. Yes, focus on, getting the economy back up and running so that everybody can share in the prosperity. But don't leave your mental health behind. Let's have talks about how important it is to have good mental health. Let's say what good mental health is. The absence of a negative is not the presence of a positive. So, you're not in psychiatric hospital, that doesn't mean you're mentally well. And I'm not speaking to anyone in particular out there. So, why would you not want to be mentally healthy? Right. That's my challenge.
That's right.
Why would you not want to be mentally healthy? And if you don't know how to, then why would you not seek some information? Go on YouTube, go online. We have lots of avenues. I explained to somebody what Google really means, and they didn't understand. I said, you remember you used to see Google, all right? Well, Google, Googol, that's a number. That's 1 and 10 to the 100th power. That's the kind of infinite amount of options that the search engine wanted to present for you. That's why they call themselves Google, G-L-E.
Right.
Yeah.
So the information is out there.
It's there.
We have to go and seek it, right?
Yeah, it's
and
there.
And embrace it. Yeah.
Yeah. And for those who have a bias, who believe it's demonic, I have to say this. All right. Anything that's not of God is demonic. So diabetes, he didn't intend for us to have diabetes. So why don't you say the demon of diabetes or hypertension? Why is it that anything to do with psychological health is instantly demonized by certain sectors, right? Until you need it.
That's right.
And then no, it's not.
So mental health is natural.
Mental health, it happens.
It's a natural state.
It happens. Yeah. The brain is part of the body. It's an organ. It can have chemical deficiencies. When your pancreas has a chemical deficiency, you have diabetes. Okay? Other parts of the body, when it's inflamed or whatever, you get symptoms related to that organ.
Indeed. So that does some wonderful insight into the human condition and into your background and everything about your illustrious career. And I'd really encourage everyone to go and pick up a copy of Once: The High Cost of Not Living by Dr. Tim Barrett. And thank you once again for coming on Jones & Company.
Again, my pleasure.
This second segment was also brought to you by Agio Digital. Thank you so much for joining us, and have a wonderful evening.